Hi, my name is Dan, and today I wanted to talk about if pet ownership affects mood and depression levels at all. It seems like a lot of the studies in this area that are reported upon and brought out there for a lot of people to see are the studies that show positive effects. But when I started to read some of the literature and look deeper into it, I found just as many studies that didn't show any benefit, or some studies that showed people with pets were worse off. So I wanted to talk about the complete picture that's out there. The first study that I wanted to talk about was a large population study out of Norway. So over 12,000 people were surveyed, over 1,000 of which had cats, around 800 some had dogs, and then they looked at depression rates. And surprisingly, they actually found the highest amount of depression scores in the owners of cats, second most in dogs, and then the lowest levels in the non-pet owners. And to provide a complete picture of this study, this was in adults older than 65 years old. So one of the potential theories behind why the depression levels was higher in the pet owners is that maybe the burden of taking care of a pet whenever these people are getting older themselves and have to take care of themselves, that the stress outweighed the potential benefits. Another study in south central Pennsylvania of 117 rural adults looked at depression and attachment to their dogs, and they found a correlation there, that the people that were most attached to their dogs also had the highest amount of depression. And this was opposed to people that had the highest amount of satisfaction with human relationships had lower levels of depression. So the potential theory behind this study would be that people who may not have the best human relationships seek a relationship elsewhere, maybe with their pet dog, and that relationship with the pet doesn't quite equal what a relationship with humans do in regards to mood boosting. So that's just a theory, but that's what the numbers did show with this small trial. I found an interesting trial in a nursing home that compared a control group, so no interactions with a pet, to a dog group. The nursing home had a facility dog, and then the third group was with a robotic stuffed animal seal called Paro. And what they found was that the groups that had the companionship had higher quality of life, less stress, less depression scales than the control group. But what they found was the stuffed robotic seal was talked to and touched more than the living live dog was. So I found that study very interesting. But the information in the studies aren't all negative. I was just trying to provide more of a complete picture. So another large population study of 11,000 German and Australian adults found that pet ownership was associated with higher physical fitness and an average of 15% less doctor visits than people who didn't have pets. So 15% less hospital visits for a population could add up to like billions of dollars in healthcare savings. Another trial showed that pet owners had a higher survival rate after heart attacks, and yet another one showed less stress levels and higher adaptability in pet owners. So there is balanced evidence out there, but it's trying to determine which evidence outweighs the other, since there are both positive and negative. When I think personally about my pet ownership, I feel like my pet brings a lot of happiness to my life. So I got my cat when I was living alone in Kansas City. I was living at the top level of an apartment building, so having a dog would be difficult. I would want a puppy, and potty training a puppy on the top floor would be really hard. Like I said, I was living alone, so when I was gone for the day, there would be no one to take care of my animals. So I ended up getting a cat. And when I first got my cat, he was really sick, and I didn't know that when I picked him up. but he had worms and he would drool down the front of his body. So I would wake up with a sick cat drooling, and I didn't have much experience with cats. So I took him to the vet. So the first couple of weeks were really stressful and definitely not helping with my happiness and my anxiety and my stress. But ever since I got him treated, my cat's been such a source of happiness for me. So he's really cuddly. He will sit on my lap. He purrs. And I think, harking back to one of the trials that I was talking about, I don't think he is a substitute for human relationships. So I still work on developing relationships with my friends and my family. And I have the cat as kind of like a boost in an additional relationship. So I think potentially that's where the difference can lay. If you use your pet to, say it's a dog, to go on walks and meet people and go to the park and be active and go hiking with your dog, that's probably a beneficial thing. Whereas if you use your pet to stay home and just sit on the couch with your pet because you can snuggle with your pet rather than face some of the problems that are out there and you don't feel like dealing with, then maybe that could be a negative aspect of having a pet. So this wraps up my personal experience with pets for mood and some of the evidence behind having a pet and increasing or decreasing mood. And I hope showing some of the balance between the studies was helpful. Thank you for listening.